Isolated from the world and surrounded by darkness, she cries out for help. But a horse's reaction changes everything, and no one was ready for what came next. The Texas backcountry was awakening with the first rays of sun cutting across the horizon. Lucy, standing on the porch of the ranch, felt the heat touch her face while her fingers traced the rough adobe walls, counting the steps to the door. 23. Always 23 steps separated her body from the freedom the yard promised. "You're not going out today." Oliver's voice sounded as rough as old sandpaper. "It's going to rain, and I don't want to have to look for you all over the place." "How do you know it's going to rain?" Lucy asked, feeling the dry air in her nostrils. "Because I said so," he replied, as dry as the cracked earth in the yard. Lucy lowered her head. In her early 20s, her slender body and tan skin hid a strength she didn't know she possessed. Her eyes, brown and still, couldn't see, but her hearing was as sharp as a cat's. And at that moment she heard perfectly what Oliver wasn't saying. He kept her imprisoned not for protection, but for possession. "I'm just going to the corral to see Star," she said, turning with practiced calmness. "That mare is nothing but expense. It's already decided, Lucy. At the end of the week, my buddy Anthony is coming to get her." Lucy's heart tightened in her chest, but her face remained impassive. She had learned that showing emotion was showing weakness, and weakness was something she couldn't afford to display. She waited until her husband's heavy footsteps retreated, then counted to 100. Slowly, she slid along the wall to the back door, her fingers recognizing every imperfection in the plaster. The path to the corral was memorized. 17 steps in a straight line, turn right at the third tree, whose trunk had a protrusion at her waist height, 12 more steps until the smell of hay and manure. Star whinnied softly as she sensed Lucy's approach. The light-colored mare, a gift from Lucy's father before the incident, was her only connection to the past, to the life that had once been hers. "They want to take you away," she whispered, sinking her fingers into the soft mane of the animal, "but I won't let them." The mare snorted as if she understood, inclining her head toward Lucy's familiar touch. "You're all I have left," her voice broke. It was while caressing Star's neck that her fingers found the loose board, a small crack, almost imperceptible. Instinctively, Lucy pressed, feeling the wood give way under her fingers. The revealed space was small, but enough to hold what her curious fingers found. A wrinkled paper protected by a dusty canvas. Her heart raced when her fingertips recognized the raised dots. Braille. Someone had left a message that only eyes, like hers, could read. She moved to a corner of the corral, away from the main house, and let her fingers dance over the paper. The message was short, but each word was like a stone thrown into still waters. "If anyone finds this, be smarter than I was. This place hides more than it seems. Look for Teresa in the house with green tiles, Iris." Lucy trembled. Who was Iris and Teresa? The second name was vaguely familiar. Perhaps a neighbor Oliver had mentioned in passing, someone who lived beyond the thorn fence that marked the property line. She carefully folded the paper and hid it inside her blouse. A plan was beginning to form in her mind, as tenuous as the morning mist but persistent. That night, lying beside Oliver, who snored heavily, Lucy counted the hours by the night sounds. The croaking of the frogs, the chirping of the crickets, the wind in the leaves of the mango tree. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream of something beyond the walls of that ranch. If Iris had left that message, it meant there had been another before her. Another who had tried to escape. And now, with Star about to be taken away, time was running out. Lucy knew she needed to act, and act quickly. The hidden message was more than a cry for help. It was a map to a freedom she had deemed impossible. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Let us know what city you're watching from. We'll continue. Dawn in the backcountry came as quickly as a sigh. Lucy was awake even before the first rooster's crow, with Iris's note hidden under the straw mattress. Her thoughts ran wild like untamed colts as she planned each step of the coming days. Oliver rose with his usual sour mood, gulping down his coffee without thanks, and leaving to check the back fence which, according to him, was giving way. His absence was like a physical relief, as if the air became lighter, more breathable. "I'll be back before lunch. Don't leave the house," he ordered, slamming the door as he left. As soon as his footsteps faded in the distance, Lucy began her investigation. With precise movements memorized over years, she traversed every corner of the house. She needed to better understand the property, the possible paths, the escape. Dracus. Iris's message had planted a seed of hope, but escaping required more than courage, it required strategy. During the morning, Lucy counted and recounted the steps from the bedroom to the kitchen, from the kitchen to the corral, from the corral to where she judged the beginning of the road to be. Each route was a tactile puzzle, each obstacle a piece to be memorized. In her mind, she built a map made of sounds and textures. "We need to find Teresa," she whispered to Star, while caressing her velvety muzzle. "The woman from the house with green tiles." The mare snorted softly, as if understanding the gravity of that moment. It was late afternoon, while sorting beans for dinner, that Lucy heard a different noise, a creaking of wheels on the dirt road, followed by light, feminine footsteps approaching the house. Her entire body went on alert. Her fingers frozen over the grains. "Hello there," called an unfamiliar voice, melodious as running water. Lucy hesitated. Oliver didn't like her answering strangers, but something in that voice pulled her like a gentle current. "Who is it?" she asked, stopping a few steps from the door. "Teresa, from the house with green tiles. I brought fresh eggs as arranged with your husband." Lucy's heart almost leaped from her chest. Teresa, the woman mentioned in Iris's note, was there, like an answer to her silent prayers. With trembling hands, she opened the door. "Oliver isn't here," she said, her voice low and cautious. "Well, that's a shame," replied Teresa in a tone that didn't match her words. "I'll leave the eggs with you then. There are 12, all fresh." Lucy extended her hands, feeling the weight of the small basket. There was something different about it, an unusual volume. When her fingers explored the contents, besides the eggs, they found a folded paper hidden under a cloth. "There's something else here," she murmured, confused. Teresa moved closer, her lips almost touching Lucy's ear. "The light mare. She's yours, isn't she? She appeared on my property a few days ago, agitated. She returned later, but I found it strange. Animals know things that we can only intuit." Lucy felt a shiver run down her spine. Star had found her way to Teresa on her own, as if she had understood that salvation might be found there. "I don't have much time," Teresa continued, her voice now a thread of sound. "But if you need help, the note has instructions. I'm Jack's sister who was married to—" "Iris," Lucy completed, her voice thick with sudden understanding. A dense silence established itself between them, full of unspoken meanings. Lucy could feel Teresa's gaze upon her, evaluating, deciding. "How did you—" Teresa began, surprise evident in her voice. "I found a note from her in the corral." Teresa slowly released her breath. "Then you know. My sister tried to leave this place many years ago. She didn't succeed, but she left clues, hoping others might." The sound of a horse approaching made Teresa move away quickly. "He's coming back. Remember, you're not alone." And just as she had arrived, Teresa departed, leaving behind a transformed Lucy. She was no longer just a blind woman trapped on an isolated ranch. She was a woman with a purpose, with allies, with a plan forming in her mind. When Oliver entered the house, he found her in the kitchen, apparently unchanged. He couldn't see the new gleam in her sightless eyes, nor guess that beneath her simple apron was hidden a note worth more than gold. "Who was here?" he asked, his nose wrinkled as if he could smell a threat. "Nobody," Lucy answered, the lie sliding easily like warm butter. "Just me and my pots." And for the first time, Lucy tasted what freedom might be like. In the dead of night, while Oliver snored heavily after several shots of whiskey, Lucy unfolded the note Teresa had given her. Her trained fingers traveled over the raised dots, revealing words that ignited sparks in her heart. "Thursday, new moon night. Dawn will come as a social worker. Be ready." That was all it said, but for Lucy, it meant a universe of possibilities. Thursday was only 3 days away. 3 days separated her from a first step toward freedom. 3 days before Anthony would come for Star. The following days passed in silent tension. Lucy worked in the house as always, washing, cooking, tidying, but each movement now had a dual purpose. While hanging clothes on the line, she counted the steps to the back fence. While sweeping the yard, she memorized the sounds of the property, the birdsong that indicated dawn, the distant sound of the creek that signaled the eastern path. Oliver noticed nothing. To him, Lucy remained the same submissive and dependent woman as always. Her blindness had made him complacent, convinced that the walls of the ranch and the darkness of her eyes were prison enough. On Wednesday night, while preparing dinner, Lucy heard Oliver announce, "Tomorrow I'm going to town to pick up some things. I'll be back before nightfall." Her heart raced. It was as if the universe were conspiring in her favor. With Oliver away during the day, Dawn would have clear passage. "Would you like me to prepare something special for when you return?" she asked, disguising the agitation in her voice. Oliver grunted an indifferent response and continued drinking. Thursday dawned damp, with heavy dew covering the yard. Lucy woke before the sun, too nervous to remain in bed. She pretended to sleep until she heard Oliver prepare to leave. When he finally departed, Lucy allowed herself to breathe deeply for the first time in days. With methodical movements, she gathered the little she considered essential: the St. Benedict medal that had belonged to her mother, a wool shawl for cold nights, a small jar with flower seeds. These were tactile memories, pieces of who she was before Oliver. It was around noon when Lucy heard the sound of a car approaching. It was unusual. Few vehicles reached this isolated part of the backcountry. Her entire body went on alert, like a sensitive antenna picking up signals. A polite knock on the door. Lucy took a deep breath before answering. "Who is it?" "Ms. Dawn from Social Services at the county. We're conducting a survey for the new rural program." The voice was firm but gentle. Lucy slowly opened the door. "My husband isn't here," she informed, maintaining the facade. "That's not a problem, dear. I can speak with you. We're visiting all the families in the region." Lucy felt Dawn enter, bringing with her a mild lavender perfume and a different, vibrant energy. She heard a folder being opened and papers being shuffled. "Can we talk inside?" asked Dawn, already walking toward the living room. When the door closed, Dawn's voice changed completely, becoming low and urgent. "We don't have much time. Teresa sent me. Are you really willing to leave this place?" Lucy swallowed hard, the reality of the moment weighing on her shoulders. Dreaming of escape was one thing. Facing the concrete possibility was quite another. "Yes," she answered, her voice firmer than expected. "I can't stay anymore." "Good. Listen carefully. Tonight, around 2 in the morning, Jack will be waiting where the creek crosses the road. Do you know the place?" Lucy nodded. She knew it by its sounds, the murmur of water meeting the beaten earth. "Take only essentials." "And the mare?" "Teresa mentioned a light-colored mare." "Star. I can't leave her." Dawn paused, as if evaluating the additional complication. "She can serve as transport, but she also draws attention. We'll have to risk it." For an hour, they planned meticulously. Dawn explained about the network supporting women in the region, formed discreetly after what had happened to Iris. She explained about the boat that would be waiting for them at the bigger river, beyond the ranch, and about the shelter in the neighboring town where Lucy could start over, far from Oliver's controlling eyes and hands. "The rain should start at nightfall," Dawn informed. "It will make the path difficult, but it will also cover your tracks and sounds." Before leaving, Dawn squeezed Lucy's hands firmly. "Courage, girl, you've already survived the worst, now it's time to live." When the car drove away, Lucy sat in the rocking chair on the porch, feigning tranquility. Inside, her heart was beating like a drum, announcing the beginning of a silent revolution. The rain arrived punctually with the sunset, just as Dawn had predicted. And with it came Oliver, soaked and ill-tempered. "This damned rain will ruin the harvest," he complained, throwing his muddy boots in the corner of the kitchen. Lucy served dinner in silence, each second stretching into hours. Whiskey, as always, accompanied Oliver's meal, one glass after another. Say a small blessing, thought Lucy. The alcohol would make him sleep more deeply. And so, while the rain washed the back country and created new paths in the dry earth, Lucy waited. For the first time in years, the sound of rain was not a prison, but a promise. The promise that before dawn she and Star would be on their way to a new life. The rain fell in dense curtains, transforming the yard into a muddy mess and muffling all other night sounds. For Lucy it was a blessing. Each thunderclap that echoed through the backcountry skies covered her cautious movements around the bedroom, where she gathered the few things she would take. Oliver slept heavily, overcome by fatigue and whiskey. His irregular snores served as a timer for Lucy. As long as he maintained that rhythm, she would be safe. The clock in the living room struck once. Still an hour to go before the time arranged with Jack. Lucy sat on the edge of the bed, her ears attentive to any change in her husband's breathing. Her hands were cold and clammy, and her heart was beating so hard it seemed ready to escape from her chest. "Be smarter than I was," Iris had written. The words echoed in her mind like a mantra. She would not make the same mistakes, whatever they had been. She would wait for the exact moment, follow the plan to the letter. When the clock sounded 2 muffled chimes through the storm, Lucy rose with the lightness of a feather. Her fingers touched the wall, guiding her out of the bedroom without making a single sound. 23 steps to the back door, 17 to the corral. The rain greeted her furiously, soaking her clothes. 10 seconds. But Lucy didn't care. The water running down her face mingled with silent tears of relief. She was doing it. She was really escaping. She reached the corral breathless, not from exertion but from anxiety. Her hands found Star's wet muzzle, who snorted softly in recognition. "Let's go, my dear," she whispered, caressing the wet mane. "Today's the day." Our freedom. With skill born from daily practice, Lucy put the saddle on Star, tying her small bundle of belongings to the animal's back. She wasn't sure if she could mount alone in the darkness and rain, but she had to try. She was about to make an effort when she felt a presence behind her. "Need help?" The unfamiliar male voice almost made her scream, but there was a gentleness there that restrained her. "Jack?" she risked, her heart pounding. "Yes, Teresa told me you'd need me earlier. The rain is getting worse and the creek has already started to rise." Lucy released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "How did you get in?" she asked, extending her hand to confirm his presence. "Oliver never changes the locks. Iris had a copy of the keys that he never discovered." The name of Jack's sister hovered between them like a shared ghost. Was she like me? Lucy couldn't contain the question. A heavy silence before the answer. Yes and no. She wasn't blind, but she was trapped within the same invisible walls. "Come on, I'll explain along the way." With Jack's help, Lucy mounted Star. The mare whinnied softly, as if comprehending the gravity of the situation. "Hold tight to her mane. I'll guide you on foot to the safe point. Then I'll mount too." And so, like a ghostly procession, they left through the corral's side gate. The rain fell relentlessly, transforming the ground into a slippery trap. But Star stepped firmly, guided by Jack's experienced hand and the sharp instinct of a backcountry animal. They advanced slowly along the trail that Lucy had never traveled alone. Each yard they moved away from the ranch was a small victory against years of oppression. The wind lashed their faces, and occasional thunderclaps startled Star, but they didn't stop. "The creek is about a quarter-mile from here," Jack informed after what seemed an eternity. "After that, we'll cross Mr. Gerald's pasture. He won't say anything. He's an old friend of my father's." Lucy nodded, even knowing that Jack probably couldn't see her in the darkness. That's when a different sound cut through the night. A distant, furious, almost inhuman cry. "It's him," whispered Lucy, fear freezing her blood. "Oliver's awake." "Quick!" Jack pulled Star with more force. "He won't catch us on foot in this rain, but we need to run." Lucy's heart beat erratically. She clung to Star's mane with all her might, while Jack quickened his pace. Mud splashed under the mare's hooves, and low tree branches whipped Lucy's face, but she didn't care. Freedom was right there, each step bringing it closer. Oliver's furious roar was left behind, muffled by the distance and the rain, but another sound soon made itself heard, the violent rush of the creek's waters, now transformed into a torrent by the storm. "The creek is too full," shouted Jack over the noise of the water. "We'll have to try to cross farther up." They diverted from the planned path, climbing up the muddy bank. Lucy felt Star slip occasionally, but the mare recovered with impressive determination. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, they reached a point where the noise of the waters seemed less violent. "Here," announced Jack, "I'll get on the mare with you. She'll have to swim a short stretch, but we can make it." With agility, Jack mounted, behind Lucy. "Hold on tight, don't let go for anything." Star advanced into the cold, turbulent water. The moment her hooves lost contact with the bottom, Lucy felt a primitive terror take hold of her body. Water, for someone who couldn't see, was doubly terrifying, a formless void, without edge, without guide. "Trust the mare," Jack shouted. In her ear, "She knows what to do." And Lucy trusted. She trusted Star, who swam with determination. She trusted Jack, who held her firmly. She trusted fate, which finally seemed to look favorably upon her. When Star's hooves finally touched the opposite bank, Lucy allowed herself to breathe again. They were on the other side. The first barrier had been overcome. "We did it." Jack didn't hide the relief in his voice. "Now let's get to the meeting point. Dawn should be waiting with the car." And as they advanced through the stormy night, leaving behind the ranch that had been her prison, Lucy felt something grow within her, an almost forgotten feeling, a shy but persistent flame hope. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Let us know what city you're watching from. We'll continue. Dawn came shyly, with the sun struggling to break through the heavy clouds that still hung over the backcountry. Lucy, exhausted, felt the first rays touch her face through the small window of the room where she had spent the rest of the night. A simple room, smelling of lavender and lye soap, in Miss Sophie's house. An elderly woman with a sweet voice, who, according to Dawn, was part of the network. The network. The expression still sounded strange to Lucy's ears, a protection web silently woven by women for women. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she let her fingers recognize the environment. The rough patchwork quilt, the small bedside table with a glass of water, the walls with irregular plaster. She was miles away from Oliver's ranch, in a small riverside community she didn't even know existed. The door opened with a soft creak. "Good morning, child. Did you sleep a little?" Miss Sophie's voice was like a sonic embrace. "A little," admitted Lucy. "I keep thinking about Star. The mare is fine. My grandson put her in the back corral with fresh hay. Beautiful animal, that one. Seems almost human, she's so smart." Lucy smiled, relieved. After the dramatic crossing of the creek the night before, Star had carried them to the arranged point, where Dawn was waiting with an old jeep. From there they had followed secondary roads to this isolated house where Lucy would find temporary shelter. "I brought some coffee and biscuits. You need to eat, gain strength," Miss Sophie approached, guiding Lucy's hand to a plate. "This afternoon, Dawn returns to discuss the next steps." Lucy nodded, nibbling at the still warm biscuit. She wasn't hungry despite the hours without eating. Her stomach was contracted with fear and uncertainty. "He'll look for me," she finally said, voicing the thought that tormented her. "Ms." Sophie sat beside her, the mattress yielding under her. "Wait." "Yes, he will. Men like Oliver don't accept losing what they consider their property, but we're prepared for that, my child. It's not the first time we've sheltered someone in this situation." "Was Iris here too?" Lucy couldn't contain the question. A heavy silence filled the room. When Miss Sophie finally responded, her voice was laden with sadness. "No, Iris didn't. I make it this far. It was after her that we formed our network, so that others would have what she didn't. A way out." Lucy felt a shiver. She wanted to ask more about Iris, to understand what had happened to her, but something in Miss Sophie's tone stopped her. There were pains, better left undisturbed. The morning passed slowly. After coffee, Lucy asked to see Star. With Miss Sophie's help, She found her way to the small corral at the back of the property. The familiar smell of the mare enveloped her like an embrace, bringing comfort amid so many uncertainties. "We're far from him now," she whispered, caressing the strong neck of the animal. "You saved us, you know. Without you, we never would." "Have crossed that creek." Star snorted softly as if understanding every word. It was in the middle of the afternoon, while resting on the porch feeling the wind that announced more rain, that Lucy heard the sound of a car approaching. Instinctively, her body stiffened, ready to flee. "It's just Dawn," reassured Miss Sophie, touching her shoulder. "I recognize the sound of that old jeep from far away." Moments later, Lucy heard Dawn's firm footsteps climbing the porch steps. "How's our fugitive?" There was a smile in her voice, but also tension. "Worried," Lucy answered honestly, "and confused. Everything happened so fast." Dawn sat beside her, while Miss Sophie brought coffee for everyone. "We have news," Dawn began. "Some good, some not so much. Oliver is furious, as we expected. He's already been to the sheriff's office to report your disappearance." Lucy felt her blood freeze in her veins. "Will the police look for me?" "Yes, but Sheriff Finch is our ally. He'll follow protocol, but he'll give us time. The bigger problem is that Oliver is offering a reward for information. And money makes a lot of people talk. I can't stay here," concluded Lucy, her heart tight. "I'm putting you all in danger." "You are," agreed Dawn without beating around the bush. "That's why we prepared the second part of the plan. Tomorrow you and Star will head to Austin. I have a cousin there, a university professor. She works with an inclusion project for visually impaired people. You'll be safe and you'll have the opportunity to learn, to grow." Austin. The word sounded like a mythological place. Lucy had never been to a big city. "But how will we get there? It's hours away." "By car, yes. But the plan is different," explained Dawn. "Jack will come for you at dawn. You'll go by boat down the river to Union Creek. There, an acquaintance of his will take you by car to Austin. It's a longer route, but much more discreet. Oliver would never imagine it." A knot formed in Lucy's throat. It was real. She was really leaving her old life behind, venturing into an unknown world. And if it doesn't work? The question escaped before she could contain it. "If he finds me," Dawn held her hands firmly, "then we'll fight, all of us. You're not alone anymore, Lucy. You'll never be again." That night, lying in the borrowed bed, Lucy cried. Not from fear or sadness, but from a feeling so deep and ancient that she didn't even know how to name it. It was as if the silent scream she had kept trapped inside herself for years had finally found an echo in the world. Somehow, Iris's desperate message, hidden in the boards of the corral, had been the first link in a chain that now pulled her toward the light. And as frightening as the unknown ahead might be, nothing was as terrifying as the prison she had left behind. With that certainty in her heart, Lucy finally fell asleep, lulled by the distant sound of the rain that was starting to fall again, washing away the last traces of her escape. The soft touch on the door woke Lucy before the first rooster's crow. Not that she had slept much. Her dreams were agitated, populated by turbulent waters and distant screams. Reality, however, demanded her immediate attention. "It's time," whispered Miss Sophie, entering the room. "Jack is already here." With quick and precise movements, Lucy dressed in the clothes Dawn had left. Sturdy pants, a cotton shirt, and a straw hat to protect her from the sun. Her few belongings, including her mother's St. Benedict medal, were stored in a small leather pouch that she hung around her neck inside her shirt. "Take this," Miss Sophie placed in her hands a package that exhaled the smell of beef jerky and cornbread. "For the journey, and this too." Lucy felt the shape of a small pocket knife being pressed into her palm. "Not to hurt anyone," explained the old woman, as if guessing her thoughts, "but to cut ropes, fruit, whatever is necessary. A woman should never be unarmed in this world." With a lump in her throat, Lucy hugged her hostess, feeling the fragility of her bones and the inexplicable strength that emanated from her. "I'll never forget what you've done for me," she murmured. "Just keep moving forward, child. And when you can, do for another what we've done for you. That's how the network strengthens. Outside, the dawn was still dark, but the sky was beginning to lighten on the horizon. Jack was waiting for them with Star already prepared and a small boat tied to the bank of the river that ran behind the property. "The river is full with the rains," he said, helping Lucy down the slippery bank. "That's good. The current will carry us faster." "And Star?" asked Lucy, worried. "She'll come with us. The boat is big enough. It was built to transport cattle during floods." Lucy felt immense relief. The idea of separating from Star was unbearable. The mare had become more than a companion. She was her link to the past, to who she was before everything. Skillfully, Jack helped Star into the boat, which dangerously rocked before stabilizing. Then he guided Lucy to an improvised seat in the bow. "Hold on tight. The river has many turns and the current is strong." With a push, the boat moved away from the bank, entering the main flow of the river. The sound of water hitting against the wood was hypnotic, almost comforting. Lucy felt the cold dawn wind on her face, and for the first time in years, a strange and forgotten feeling: freedom. For hours they let themselves be carried by the current, with Jack only guiding the boat with a long oar to avoid obstacles. They talked little. He seemed lost in thought, and she absorbed each new sensation of the journey. The smell of water mixed with that of riverside vegetation, the sounds of unknown birds, the gradual warmth of the sun that was beginning to rise. "I'm sorry about what happened to your sister," Lucy finally said, breaking the long silence. Jack sighed heavily, the oar making a slight noise as it cut through the water. "Iris was like you, strong, determined, but she sought us out too late." "What happened to her?" Lucy couldn't contain the question that had tormented her since finding the note in the corral. A long silence stretched before Jack answered. "Oliver found her before we could reach her. He wasn't gentle." Lucy shuddered, a chill running down her spine. She wanted to ask more, but something in Jack's tone stopped her. There were wounds better left untouched. "That's why we created the network," he continued. "So that other women would have a chance, so that her sacrifice wouldn't be in vain." The sun was already high when they stopped for a brief rest on a small island in the middle of the river. Star, restless after hours in the boat, was allowed to stretch her legs while Lucy and Jack shared the food Miss Sophie had prepared. "So far, so good," he commented, looking around attentively. "If we maintain this pace, we'll reach Union Creek before nightfall." That's when they heard it. At first, it was just a distant rumble, almost indistinguishable from the sound of the river. But soon, it became clear. An engine was approaching. "Boat," murmured Jack, suddenly tense. "Too big to be a fisherman." Lucy felt fear settling in her stomach like a cold stone. "Do you think it's him? That Oliver found us?" "I don't know, but we're not going to wait to find out." With quick movements, Jack called Star back to the boat and helped Lucy embark. In minutes, they were back in the middle of the river, now rowing vigorously to increase speed. The sound of the engine grew ever closer. Lucy, unable to see the danger, felt it with every fiber of her being. Her sharpened hearing captured the sound cutting through the water, advancing inexorably toward them. "We need to get off." "The river," Jack decided. "There's a tributary just ahead, too small for large boats. We can hide there." With renewed strength born of desperation, he maneuvered the boat toward the bank, seeking the entrance to the creek he spoke of. The engine noise was so close now that it seemed to come from all sides. "There!" exclaimed Jack, and Lucy felt the boat make a sharp turn. The dense vegetation brushed her arms as they entered the narrow tributary, hidden by overhanging trees. Jack stopped rowing, letting only the gentle current carry them, minimizing the noise. "Get down," he whispered, and Lucy obeyed, pressing herself against the damp bottom of the boat. The engine passed roaring by on the main river, so close that the water stirred even in the tributary. Lucy held her breath, her heart beating so hard she was sure it could be heard. Long minutes passed before Jack spoke again. "I think they're gone. I can't hear the engine anymore." Lucy slowly released, her breath allowing herself to relax a little. Was it him? "I couldn't see, but better not to risk it. Let's follow this tributary as far as it goes, then we'll cut across land until we find the river again farther ahead." The new route was slower and more laborious. The narrow creek meandered through the woods, often obstructed by fallen branches that needed to be pushed aside. Star seemed nervous, occasionally whinnying as if sensing the danger. When finally the tributary became too shallow to continue, Jack guided the boat to the bank. The surrounding forest was dense, the sounds of wildlife creating an unsettling symphony. "We need to walk now," he explained, helping Lucy disembark. "About 6 miles through the woods until we reach the big river again. There a friend is waiting for us with another boat." "And Star?" asked Lucy, concerned about the unknown terrain. "She'll guide us. Mares like her have a better sense of direction than most people." And so, once again fleeing from shadows that seemed to pursue them, Lucy found herself entering the unknown forest, guided only by Jack's steady hand and Star's reassuring snort. The sun was beginning to descend in the sky when the trees finally began to thin out. The smell of water announced the proximity of the big river again. Lucy felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. They were almost there, almost safe. But with each step closer to Union Creek and to her new life in Austin, one question persisted in her mind. How far would Oliver go to find her? And more importantly, how far would she go to remain free? The last rays of sun filtered through the treetops when Lucy, Jack and Star finally reached the bank of the big river again. Fatigue weighed on Lucy's shoulders, each step a small battle against exhaustion and fear. Her feet, unaccustomed to long walks, burned inside her shoes, but a fierce determination kept her moving. "We made it," announced Jack with evident relief in his voice. "Tony's boat should be right there around that bend." Lucy nodded, sliding her fingers through Star's damp mane, who snorted tiredly beside her. The mare had proved incredibly skilled during the crossing through the dense woods, as if she could see not just for herself, but for her owner as well. "Do you think we lost that boat?" asked Lucy, worry still weighing on her chest. Jack took time to respond, as if carefully weighing his words. "Maybe, but we can't lower our guard. Oliver has influence in this region, eyes and ears in many places." They walked in silence along the riverbank until they found a small cove where a man awaited them beside a simple but apparently robust boat. "I was worried," said the man, whom Lucy presumed to be Tony. "You should have arrived hours ago." "We had to detour," Jack explained succinctly. "Suspicious vessel on the river." A heavy silence settled between the men. Lucy could feel the palpable tension in the air. "Can you take all three?" Jack finally asked. "The mare will make the boat heavy, but the current is in our favor," replied Tony. "Let's go quickly. The night on the river is treacherous, and we still have a good stretch to Union Creek." With the help of both men, Lucy boarded again, followed by a reluctant Star. The boat rocked dangerously under the additional weight before stabilizing. Soon they were navigating the river, now calmer than in the morning. While Tony and Jack conversed in low voices at the bow, Lucy allowed herself a moment of reflection. In less than a week, her life had been completely transformed. Oliver's isolated ranch, which for years had been her prison, now seemed as distant as a nightmare at dawn. Ahead of her was the unknown, frightening, but also full of possibilities. "You need to eat something," Jack's voice interrupted her thoughts as he sat beside her, offering a piece of cornbread and jerky. "We still have a few hours of travel." Lucy accepted gratefully, only then realizing how hungry she was. "Thank you for all of this," she said, her voice thick with contained emotion. "I don't even know how to repay you." Jack sighed, and Lucy sensed that he was looking at the horizon, where the sun was beginning to set. "You don't need to repay me. After what happened, I swore I would do everything possible to help other women in similar situations." There was something in his tone, a poorly healed pain that made Lucy gather courage to ask, "Jack, you never really told me what happened to your sister." The silence that followed was so long that Lucy began to think he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was laden with an ancient and deep sadness. Iris was a teacher at a rural school. She met Oliver when he came to enroll one of his ranch hand's children. He courted her, promised her the world. She was enchanted. He made a painful pause. "We knew nothing about him, his reputation, his temperament." Lucy felt a chill as she realized the similarities between Iris's story and her own. When we began to notice the changes in her, continued Jack, it was already too late. We rarely saw her. When she did appear, she was different, quiet, frightened, with excuses for bruises and dark circles. The boat glided silently down the now dark river, only the moonlight illuminating the way. Star snorted softly, as if she, too, were listening to the story. I tried to visit her several times, but Oliver always had excuses. The ranch was isolated, difficult to access, until one day I received a letter. She had managed to give it to a boy who sold fruit. It said she needed help, that she feared for her life. Lucy felt her heart tighten. She imagined Iris, as desperate as she herself had been, writing that plea for help. We organized everything in secret. We were supposed to get her on a moonless night, but we arrived late. His voice faltered. Oliver discovered the plan. There was an argument. By the time we finally got into the ranch, we found Iris. He didn't complete the sentence, but it wasn't necessary. Lucy could feel the weight of the tragedy in every unspoken word. So the network, she began, finally understanding, was born of guilt, of anger, of grief, Jack completed. Teresa, my cousin, gathered other women. Dawn, who already worked with similar cases in social services. Miss Sophie, who had gone through a similar situation decades ago, and others, many others. The pieces of the puzzle finally fit together. The urgency with which they had helped, her, the efficiency of the network. It all made sense now. That's why Oliver never mentioned Iris, murmured Lucy, almost to herself. And the letter in the corral, she left it so that other women would know. Exactly, and when Star appeared alone on Teresa's property, as agitated as she was, we immediately suspected. Animals sense things that we humans are sometimes blind to perceive. Lucy extended her hand, finding Jack's arm and squeezing it firmly. I'm sorry about your sister, and I thank you for not giving up, for creating this network that saved my life. Jack covered her hand with his. Each woman we manage to help is a victory, a way to honor her memory. The silence that followed was no longer heavy but shared, a mutual understanding of what was at stake, of how significant this journey was. It was Tony who broke the moment, pointing to lights that were beginning to appear in the distance. Union Creek, he announced, we're arriving. The town, though small, shone like a beacon of hope in the darkness. Lucy felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. They were close to their destination, but also to the unknown. What happens now, she asked, the reality of the new life beginning to weigh on her shoulders. We're going to Peter's house, Tony's brother, explained Jack. We'll rest tonight. In the morning, he'll take you to Austin. Mary, Dawn's cousin, will be waiting at the bus station. Austin. The name of the city still sounded like a distant promise, a place where she could start over, free from the shadows of the past. And you? Aren't you coming with us? Jack sighed deeply. No, I need to go back. There are other women who need help. The network never stops. Lucy nodded, understanding. His mission was greater than an individual rescue. It was a commitment to all the Irises and Lucys who were still trapped in their own isolated ranches, under the yoke of their own Olivers. As the boat approached the illuminated banks of Union Creek, Lucy felt a strange peace settle in her chest. The path ahead would be difficult, full of challenges, but for the first time in years it was a path chosen by herself, a path of possibilities, not limitations. And that, in itself, was worth every painful step, every moment of fear, every sacrifice yet to come. The bus station in Austin buzzed with life that Thursday morning. The murmur of voices, the rumble of engines, the smell of diesel and fried food, all of this formed an urban symphony completely foreign to Lucy. After 2 days of travel, first by boat to Union Creek and then in Peter's old car over bumpy roads, she had finally reached the capital. Seated on a worn wooden bench, with Star properly accommodated in a temporary stable behind the bus station, thanks to Peter's contacts, Lucy waited. Her fingers drummed nervously on the small bag that contained all her belongings. The big city, with its chaotic sounds and accelerated rhythm, intimidated her more than the turbulent waters of the river during the escape. "Are you thirsty?" asked Peter, extending a bottle of fresh water to her. "Thank you," Lucy murmured, grateful for the man's constant kindness. Peter was different from his brother Tony. Where Tony was quiet and pragmatic, Peter talked a mile a minute, describing the world around them with a contagious enthusiasm that helped Lucy visualize what she couldn't see. "That must be Mary," he suddenly commented, his voice animated. "A tall woman, with grey hair tied in a bun, coming our way. She looks like a teacher." Lucy felt her heart accelerate. Dawn's cousin, her new guardian in the unknown city, had finally arrived. "You must be Lucy," a firm and educated voice sounded in front of her. "I'm Mary Winters. Dawn told me about you." Lucy extended her hand, which was firmly shaken. "And you must be Peter," Mary continued. "I thank you for bringing her safely. Was the journey smooth?" "No problems," replied Peter, "but we took extra precautions. We made a detour through Amarillo before heading here, in case someone was following us." Though he tried to disguise it, Lucy felt the tension in Peter's voice. They still weren't completely safe, and everyone knew it. "Well, now she's under my protection," affirmed Mary with a conviction that somewhat calmed Lucy's fears. "As for the mayor, I've already arranged everything. A colleague from the university has a small farm on the outskirts of the city. Star will be fine there, and you can visit her whenever you want." The relief Lucy felt was so great that her eyes filled with tears. The idea of separating from Star, even temporarily, had been one of her greatest fears. After saying goodbye to Peter, who needed to return that same day, Lucy followed Mary to her car parked near the bus station. During the journey through the busy streets of Austin, Mary described the city, the neighborhoods, the people. She spoke in a clear and didactic manner, like the university professor she was. "You'll initially live with me," she explained. "I have a spacious house in the St. Christopher neighborhood, not far from the university. There's a room specially prepared for you." "I don't know how to thank you," said Lucy, her voice thick with emotion. "You're doing so much for a stranger." Mary paused before responding, as if carefully choosing her words. "I don't consider you a stranger, Lucy. I consider you a survivor, someone who had the courage that many didn't have." She made another significant pause. "Including my own daughter." Her revelation hung in the air like a dense cloud. Lucy didn't dare ask more, feeling she had touched on a still open wound. "At the university," Mary continued, subtly changing the subject, "I coordinate an inclusion project for visually impaired people. We teach Braille mobility techniques and offer professional training courses. If you're interested, there's a spot waiting for you." Lucy's heart accelerated at the possibility. Education, independence, a future, things she had considered. Forever lost after the accident that took her sight, and subsequently the forced marriage to Oliver. "He would love that," she finally responded. When they arrived at Mary's house, Lucy was greeted by the smell of fresh coffee and cheese biscuits, a welcoming home, organized in a way to facilitate the mobility of someone who couldn't see, as she soon noticed. Furniture arranged logically, textured strips on the floor indicating paths, Braille labels on the doors. "I prepared everything for you," explained Mary, guiding her through the environment. "My husband, August, is an architect specializing in accessibility. He thought of every detail." "You planned all this, and for me?" asked Lucy, incredulous. "For you and for others who will come after," Mary replied simply. "Our network doesn't just rescue, we rebuild lives." In the days that followed, Lucy gradually adapted to the new reality. She met August, Mary's husband, a gentleman with a deep voice who treated her with respect and consideration. She visited Star at the farm, where the mayor seemed happy in her new spacious environment. And, most importantly, she began attending the Inclusion Center at the university. It was there, 3 weeks after her arrival in Austin, that Lucy received the news she both feared and expected. "Oliver was here," Mary said one afternoon, entering the room where Lucy was practicing Braille reading. "In the city, not at the university. He's looking for you." Lucy's blood froze in her veins. Her fingers stopped over the raised dots of the book she was reading. How did he? Someone must have talked. Money buys a lot of information, Mary sat beside her. But don't worry, we're prepared for this. August has already contacted our lawyer. Lawyer? Lucy felt panic rise. For what? To request a restraining order against him, Mary explained calmly, and to initiate divorce proceedings, if you want. Divorce. The word sounded strange, almost forbidden. Lucy had never really considered that possibility. In her isolated world on the ranch, Oliver was her immutable reality, her perpetual prison. He'll never accept it, she murmured, fear evident in her voice. It's not a question of accepting or not, Mary responded firmly. It's your right. And we have sufficient evidence of the abuse and control you suffered. Evidence? The testimonies of Teresa, Miss Sophie, Dawn. The entire network is willing to testify. And there's also... Mary hesitated. Iris's case. The name of the woman who had left that desperate note in the corral years ago still caused a shiver in Lucy. What does Iris have to do with this? Mary took a deep breath before answering. What happened to her was never properly investigated. Now we have an opportunity to reopen these questions, to expose Oliver for what he really is. A whirlwind of emotions took hold of Lucy. Fear, anger, hope, determination, all mixed in her chest like the turbulent waters of the river during the storm. It was at this moment that something unexpected happened. A different voice entered. The room, young and full of life. Mom, I brought the documents Dad asked for. Claire, good that you're here, replied Mary. Come, I want to introduce you to Lucy. Claire, Mary's daughter, the one who, according to the previous insinuation, perhaps hadn't had the same courage as Lucy. Pleased to meet you, said the young woman approaching. Her voice had a special quality, as if she smiled while speaking. Mum told me your story. You're amazing. I didn't do anything special, murmured Lucy, embarrassed by the compliment. I disagree, Claire replied firmly. There was a pause before she continued. I also lived with a man who controlled me, a boyfriend in college. I didn't have your courage to leave, to seek help. It was Mom who rescued me, literally. The revelation surprised Lucy. So that was it. Mary's involvement in the Women's Protection Network had personal roots, very personal ones. That's why Mum's project means so much to us, Claire continued. Each woman who finds the strength to start over gives us hope. Each story of liberation is a collective victory. That night, sitting on the porch of Mary's house, Lucy made her decision. She would no longer run. She wouldn't allow Oliver to intimidate her or force her to live in the shadows. She would fight for the divorce, for her legal freedom, for her right to exist beyond the invisible walls he had built around her. 2 weeks later, accompanied by Mary, Claire, and August, Lucy appeared at the courthouse for the first hearing. Her body trembled with nervousness, but her voice remained firm. When in the hallway she heard Oliver's familiar and threatening voice, she didn't cower as before. You're coming back home with me, Lucy, he hissed, approaching. This whole circus won't change anything. Before anyone could intervene, Lucy raised her face in the direction of his voice, her blind eyes fixed with impressive precision. No, Oliver, I'll never go back. This is my home now. This is my life. The firmness in her voice surprised him. She was no longer the submissive and frightened woman he had known. She was someone new, someone who had found her voice and her strength. The legal process was long and draining, as Mary had warned. Oliver used every available resource to make it difficult, to intimidate. But for each of his moves, the network had a response. Witnesses appeared. Documents surfaced. Iris's case was reopened, casting new light on Oliver's obscure past. 6 months later, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, Lucy received the news. The divorce had been granted, along with the permanent restraining order. Oliver was prohibited from approaching her for any reason. To celebrate, Mary organized a small gathering at the farm where Star was housed. Dawn came from Palmdale especially for the occasion. Jack couldn't attend, but he sent a touching letter that Claire read aloud to everyone. While the others chatted animatedly around the table set under the pecan tree, Lucy moved a little away, walking to where Star grazed peacefully. She caressed the mare's neck, feeling the familiar texture of the coat, the comforting warmth of the animal that had been her first link to freedom. "We did it, Star," she whispered, resting her forehead against the soft mane. "We really did it." On the horizon, the sun was beginning to set, painting the Texas backcountry sky with shades of orange and red that Lucy couldn't see but could feel in the warmth that caressed her face. A new day would come tomorrow. And for the first time, in many years, Lucy awaited it not with fear but with hope. Because now she knew her story wasn't just about escaping from a prison. It was about building a life beyond the walls, about transforming scars into strength, about being a link in a chain of women who, hand in hand, created new paths where before there had only been silence and darkness. And as the warm evening, wind whispered among the leaves of the trees, bringing the smell of damp earth and wildflowers, Lucy smiled, a full smile, without shadows. The smile of someone who had finally rediscovered not just freedom, but something much more precious, herself. If this story interests